Grimsby Town made the decision last season to part company with club legend Paul Hurst, who's got the club back into the Football League across 2 different stints, and of course masterminded that incredible best FA Cup performance since 1939 in 22-23. But the ownership, Jason Stockwood and Andrew Petit, wanted to go in a different direction. They've appointed David Artell in November last season. Saw flashes of David Artell's ideas, didn't we, in the first few months of his reign, but there remained a defensive vulnerability about Grimsby. So in February, they had a bit of a change of tack. They solidified not quite as many of the attacking ideas on show, but they were able, crucially, to grind out results that meant they retained their EFL status. Now, with a clear summer ahead to rebuild the squad, we're hoping to see a few more of David Artell's ideas at Blundell Park. Can he execute them for Grimsby Town to climb the table and make progress in 24-25? That's what we're about to find out in this Summer Deep Dive. Yes, welcome along to this EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive on Grimsby Town, one of many across the EFL, 72 to be precise, between mid-June and mid-July. Already a few uploaded to YouTube and Spotify, so go check those out once you're done with this one. For now, delighted to be joined by Adam Howard from View from the Findus podcast. I got you mixed up because you said you're a main stander, and for some reason I thought I had you down as Adam Stander, so I need to update my WhatsApp. But glad to have that clarified.
There was one moment I thought you'd called me Adam Sandler. I thought, cool.
Well, you'd take that, wouldn't you?
You don't think he's talking to a celebrity here, does he?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of your movies, Adam.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So I wanted to I guess get your reflections on last season. Probably on the whole, a bit of a disappointing one, and I suppose one of stylistic transition that kind of weren't able to really get the results you were hoping for.
Yeah, it was. Well, let's face it was a bit of a bumpy ride last season. Last summer we got a lot of business done quite early, and I think that on the back of the cup run, on the back of finishing 11th the year before, I think that built a lot of optimism in the fan base.
Yeah.
However, and actually we started okay. We had a lot of tough, on paper, what we thought were a lot of tough games early on in the season.
If you'd won at Bradford, you'd have probably, I think off the top of my head, you might have been about 5th or 6th or something, and then they equalised in the last minute. I think it was the first international weekend, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Red hot day, And I remember at half-time, that seemed like quite a pivotal game. At half-time there, I was thinking, we're looking quite good this year. We're looking like a side that could flirt with the playoffs. Instead, we ended up flirting outrageously with Wealdstone, didn't we, again?
with all the respect in the world to Wealdstone, obviously.
Exactly, yeah. A few years since we've been there, thankfully, or a couple of years. But yeah, obviously, from that point, it all seemed to go badly wrong. And ultimately, it cost Hurst his job. Still, obviously, there's always going to be in these situations, but still question marks over whether that was the correct move or not.
Sure.
I would like to hope that it is. But obviously, Artell came in, and that bumpy ride continued because he, as you alluded to a minute ago, he tried to continue playing started trying to implement rather the Artell style of play. And we just didn't have players technically gifted enough for that. We actually interviewed a Grimsby Town legend the other day, Craig Disley, who I'm sure you'll remember, and did an hour's podcast with him. Lovely bloke, so down to a fabulous bloke to chat to. But he's done quite a bit of commentary this season for Radio Humberside. Something that he said stood out, actually, was he said that he feels with this current team that we really struggle to hold on to the ball and string a few passes together. he said there seems to be a real lack of players that can just keep the ball and knock it around.
Sure.
And again, that's probably why the Artell style just hasn't worked, because ultimately he's all about keeping possession and nice passing moves. But ultimately, thanks to signings like Curtis Thompson, thanks to Rose, who obviously we had all season, Tham to an extent, we managed to grind it out to the end of the season and retain our EFL status. Otherwise, I don't know who I'd be sat chatting to now, Gab.
I'm sure there's some lovely National League presenters out there, but probably a less appealing proposition for Grimsby Town playing in the. So I think it's great that you've been able to retain your EFL status, but I'm glad the club hasn't sort of celebrated it as an achievement, and it's very much it's a relief, but it's there's a lot more to come and a lot more progress to be made. I guess the first question the first question I'd ask you, Adam, is what have you made of the first sort of 5 months of Artell's reign?
Well, we were quite hopeful. I'm talking as a group here of the podcast gang here. We were quite hopeful when we brought Artell in because of his history, what he'd done at Crewe, his style of play, and we were fairly pleased that with the appointment. Obviously, that soon went badly wrong. Shipping 6 against Walsall and 5 against Doncaster, and it started to look very worrying. And I'm just delighted that he did come away from basically because that's not an easy thing to do when you've got an idea in your head in any walk of life. If you want to do something a certain way, to accept that actually this isn't working at the moment and to change from that. I'm just pleased he wasn't stubborn there and continued, because I do believe that if we had continued, like I say, we may well have been not just flirting with Wealdstone, but we might be sat on the knee now. And so, I'm pleased that he was able to change. And again, that's a good sign of management. I mean, that's builds hope for the future, because if you're able to do that and adapt, and that's good management. Ultimately, he's kept us in the league, but it's next season. He's now got this summer to bring in. We're going to be bringing in a lot of players, I'm certain, and judge him on this season more than anything. He's kept us up last year. Now's his time to try and prove himself and hopefully aim for at least a top half finish.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what the ironic thing is, though, Adam? I actually think you were a more creative side before the results actually stabilised, because even some of those games that you mentioned, like Doncaster, for example, in the first half of that game, you could have easily scored 3 goals. Walsall, for instance, miles the better side in the first 35 minutes or so. So I think even in those games where there were a lot of goals conceded, I did see a way for Grimsby to create chances, and some of those combination play out wide was starting to come together. But I can also appreciate that when you've got players in midfield like Harry Clifton and Kieran Green, who aren't necessarily the greatest technicians in the world, I can see how there might be a sort of a nervousness creeping into Blundell Park and a kind of an anxiety that led to certain defensive issues. And I think it was really important that you addressed those. And it did seem like the Doncaster game was a bit of a watershed moment where I think David's spoken about that publicly, where in the dressing room, spoken to the players and kind of gave them the license, I suppose, to express what they felt about things and how they wanted to go about it. And that felt like an important moment, because after that, I think you drew at Morecambe and then got that crucial victory over Forest Green. And I think you went 6 unbeaten from that point, didn't you?
We did, yes. Yeah. I mean, obviously, within that run of games where we were shipping a lot of goals. There was the classic Notts County game within there as well, which would back your point up that we were certainly more creative. I mean, 5-5. It's rare you get a game finished with that scoreline. And yes, we were creating more chances, but we were leaving ourselves so open, and teams were just able to pick us off. And again, even right back to, I don't think the team had full confidence in either keeper last season, in Cartwright or Eastwood. Obviously, I'm sure we'll move on to talking about.
Sure.
Hopefully, we've sorted that situation out. But yeah, it obviously football's all about creating chances and scoring, but ultimately you need a solid defence. It goes back to these Euros, doesn't it? That England have got a fantastic chance of winning it as long as that defence can be solid. And that's where the question marks are. And if we find ourselves conceding a couple in some games, we probably won't go on and win it. You need a solid defence. Most teams in history that do well have got that solid back line that don't concede many.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be really important. So let's go to the goalkeeping position, because you've brought in Jordan Wright from Lincoln City down the road. Seems to have some really good reviews from Sincilbank.
Yes, he does. I mean, obviously the big question marks are the lack of EFL experience that he's had. He's had some loans. I think he was at Alfreton, Nuneaton, a few non-league loans. But actually playing time in the Football League, he hasn't had loads of minutes. However, having said that, that's not always the be-all and end-all. And a goalkeeping position, that can be tricky, because if you're number 2, you're not going to get many minutes, are you? Sure. It's unlikely. You can find yourself on the bench a lot. However,
well, I can read out a comment that I've got here from Jake Tong, who's a Lincoln City fan as well. Wonderful. If that's a bit of insight for you. I really like Jordan. He deputised really well during different points since we signed him from Nottingham Forest. He's been really unfortunate that he's had serious competition in Carl Rushworth and Lucas Jensen ahead of him. He's a tall, commanding goalkeeper and a great shot stopper. He thinks it's a good deal for Grimsby Town. So.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of the reviews I've read from Lincoln fans are saying, yeah, it'll be a good signing, and a lot of them quite disappointed they didn't keep hold of him. But I suppose he's 25 now. Ultimately, he's going to want to start being first choice somewhere, and if that means dropping down a league, you can see why, from his perspective, why he's come to us. Fairly local, and he's at an age now where he'll want to establish himself. Otherwise, he could find most of his career he's number 2 somewhere. I think what's interesting as well is his age, in that he's 25. And when you look at the people that we've signed, when you look at the people we've been linked with, a lot of the rumours, obviously sometimes they can be wild rumours, but they're all within that sort of age bracket of mid-20s. I know Tyrell Warren's 25, and even like the players we've offered contracts to retain, like Ainley, I think, is 26, and Hume 27. They all seem to be that sort of age where they're coming into what we'd often talk about, their prime of their career.
Yeah.
But have got that experience, but also potential sell-on value if they do come in and are fantastic. They're not towards the end of the career. So yeah, I think that's quite interesting. But yeah, I just hope, because I'm almost certain, well, I am certain he's been brought in as number 1. Eastwood will be backup goalkeeper. If he stays, I mean, there's always potential that he goes out and we loan in another backup keeper, who knows. But yeah, he's been brought in as number 1, and it's a vital position on the pitch. So I just hope those Lincoln reviews are spot on, basically.
Yeah, let's hope that's the case. You mentioned Tyrell Warren there. I think it's going to be really interesting to see Well, first of all, I guess Artell went with a wing-back system last season. I'd be inclined to imagine that when he's done that previously in his career, it's been as a temporary measure to react to the personnel that he's got available, as opposed to something, a kind of blueprint that he's going to go with. Do you see him going with a back four and using someone like Tyrrell Warren as an out-and-out right back rather than as a right wing back?
Yes, I do. Simply just on when you look at Artell sides in the past have predominantly played a back
4-3-3.
four.
Yeah.
Warren, when he's played, has usually played right back in a back four. I think it was yourself, Gab. I think I was chatting to you about that
Yeah.
signing. I think you said that that's why he's found himself outside Barrow's side a bit last season, because they switched up formation, and Warren seems to be much more comfortable playing in that back four. So yes, I can imagine that will be the case. And I think we'd have probably stuck with it last season, but it just malarkey. It didn't work for him at right back. He was much more comfortable when we were at wing backs with the three central defenders. So I think, yeah, he's brought him in, and I think that points very much to us going back to probably a 4-3-3 type formation with Warren in at that right back position. Possibly Hume if he stays with us in the left back position.
Yeah, let's hope Hume does stay. That left back spot does look a bit open at the moment.
Very much, yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be really interesting to see who you can bring in. That's going to be a big priority. Hopefully, get someone in before the start of pre-season. But yeah, I'm excited to see how Tyrrell Warren gets on. I think he's probably going to be a bit more athletic, maybe, than Toby Malarkey, and someone that's going to enjoy the one-on-one duels a bit more. Hopefully, he can be technically at a decent level, but I think his ability to get from one end of the pitch to the other is going to be pretty strong. I've seen him have a great spring on him. Actually, I remember, so Barrow played away at Stockport on the opening day of 22-23, and because Barrow don't have either ball-playing centre-backs nor a target man at the time, they actually used Tyrrell Warren as a kind of someone to go to, even though he was playing left back, I think, and he'd actually sort of won a header and flicked something on for a goal. So he's definitely very springy, even though I think he's only 5'9" or something like that, 5'11" maybe. So yeah, I'm excited to see how Tyrrell Warren gets on. But
he
then
gets the odd. Oh, sorry, I'm jumping in there. He gets the odd goal as well. I've noticed. I mean, he's for Barrow. He played 61 League Two games, scoring 4 goals, which for a right back in a flat back four, that's quite 1 in 15. Is not bad going, is it? It points to him getting you 3 or 4 goals a season, which and that thing of goals all over the pitch. We're all obsessed with a 25 goal a season striker, but there's not many of those about. So
it's those 1%ers, isn't it? You get a few goals from your right back, it all adds up, doesn't it?
Very much
over the course of the team. So yeah, hopefully Tyrrell Warren can chip in with a few. The centre half position looks really interesting because Doug Tharm and Harvey Rogers formed, I think, a decent pairing in the last couple of months of the campaign, Adam.
Yes. Yeah, they did. It's going to be because obviously Mars moved on, which we expected. He was out the side. He was actually involved with a crash, him and Glennon, which they had minor injuries for. But then we didn't really see him again much after that at all. And it was all a bit... almost a bit murky. We're not quite sure what's gone on there, and he sort of was frozen out the side a little bit. I mean, I think we're probably looking into it too much. I think most of it's just because Tharm and Rogers were a solid pairing at the end of that season. So yeah, I can imagine it might well be those two that start at centre half, but obviously that will depend on who else we bring in that position. I mean, there's been a few rumours floating around, as there always is. There's Cameron McJanet.
Yes, that's the name I've heard. Yeah.
Playing at Derry City in Ireland at the moment. Again, 25 years old. Fits the narrative, obviously that data search. You can almost see what they've put in, can't you, as the parameters. So, yeah, I can see it probably being Tham and Rodgers that starts the season as the two centre-halves, depending on who we bring in. I would say it'll almost certainly be Tham, and it's whether Rodgers is that man alongside him or whether we bring somebody else in. The one that I worry about, I'm not quite sure where he will fit in if we change the formation, is Malarkey. Simply because it didn't work for him as a right back in that back four. He looked out of position a lot. Whether he would be able to play centre half in a back four as well as he played at the end of last season, I don't know. Jury's out on that one. I mean, maybe you can tell me. Has he played centre back much in a back four?
I think he has played centre back previously in his career in non-league. I would imagine he could do that. He seems to be quite a bit of a back foot defender who kind of doesn't like to jump in too much. But I suppose that can be an advantage sometimes because it means that he's not completely out of position. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Whereas. So, for instance, I think when he plays right back, he tends to like to have someone ahead of him that's closing down his man, and he's kind of stays quite disciplined, which I guess is a mentality that might translate quite well to central defence, possibly.
Yes, yeah, potentially so. And I think interesting again, because obviously you end up reading bits, just to jump back to that Cameron McJanet, which obviously, who knows, he may well not sign for us. But a lot of people have spoken about how he's quite comfortable on the ball and can pick a pass. And again, that points to the style of play that we know that Artell is going to want to try and implement.
Well, I've got a review from Blog Irish, who basically cover Irish football and very knowledgeable about players. So I tweeted Blog Irish when I heard the rumours about Cameron McJanet. I don't have any inside info on that or anything, by the way. One of the best defenders in the country, Blog Irish says, since signing with Derry. Doesn't surprise me that he's been linked with a move back to the UK. Has a lovely pinging pass on him, probably one of the best in the league at that too. And based on the aerial duel monsters graph that I've got here, it says he's one of the he's above average of aerials duels won and aerial duels attempted. So that suggests he's strong in the air as well. So that does sound like. I guess this kind of takes me point on it to, I guess, the recruitment process at Grimsby, Adam, because what I'm really excited about is you look at other clubs in League Two. I'm going to use Cheltenham Town as an example, not just Cheltenham, but they're a club that comes to mind. They're kind of using, who does our director of football, Gary Johnson, know? Who does our manager, Michael Flynn, know? That's kind of how they seem to be doing their business. With Grimsby, Joe Hutchinson is using this database platform to look for players, and he's a real specialist in data. I know David, I think, has spoken quite highly of him as well. But it really excites me that Grimsby are looking from a really wide pool of players and they're being very sort of clever about how they're looking for players. So that's something that I'm really encouraged about.
Very much, yeah. You could have added Shrewsbury to that list of teams bringing in players. Like
sure.
Obviously, Toto's just gone back in there. I mean, Hurst, classic Hurst stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, it is. It's interesting that we're looking further afield. I mean, there was a bit of a cryptic video, which I'm not sure whether you've seen, of Artell, which put a lot
I love it. It was like Grimsby Town fans turning into Poirot there.
It was very much.
I recognise those yellow bollards. They only exist in Iceland.
Yeah, suddenly on Google Earth, searching around, trying to find out where exactly it was. It was, fabulous stuff. So again, it's I mean, he might have just been on his holiday. He might have just gone to Iceland.
You might fancy Reykjavik, Adam. It's lovely.
Exactly. Yeah. Who knows? I mean, we've all looked into it, and he's just gone there for a week away. Who knows? But it's it is going to be very interesting. And I think when you bring players in like that, who are going to be new to the league, you can it can work either way. It could either be fantastic and we really find some hidden gems that have gone under the radar of other clubs and we pick them up and it works beautifully for us, or they may not adapt to the league and then suddenly we could find ourselves really struggling. However, that will only bringing players in from abroad like that, it's only going to be a small part of our recruitment, I'm sure. I mean, in terms of like
England, sorry, Adam, I think playing in England is an attraction for players abroad because it's like maybe, the theory could be that championship clubs, they might be scouting League One and Two more heavily than they might be scouting the league that they're in at the moment. So if I go to a League Two club and do really well in League Two, then I've got a chance of earning myself a move higher up the pyramid. So I think that's a great opportunity that Grimsby have got.
Definitely. And couple that with the beautiful fish and chips, and you can see why they're flocking over here. I mean,
absolutely, yeah.
The Vikings have been invading this area for centuries, Gab. It's no different. So yeah, you're very right. There's that potential of, I mean, even the money that gets thrown about in the Championship these days, it's eye-watering, isn't it? And there's that potential of them coming over, impressing again, because we talked about their ages. They're not towards the end of the career. They'll still have hopes of playing as high as possible. Come in and do a great job for us for a year. We sell them on to a championship club, make that profit, and everybody's a winner. So that will be the hope. What I was going to ask, and I don't know whether you'll be able to answer this.
Please.
But the Irish League, where we've obviously we've been linked to players, and obviously the Icelandic League, and you may find that one tougher to answer. In terms of quality and in terms of ability, where would you put those? I mean, obviously, I'm I'm probably asking something that you're going to say I can't really answer that.
Well, I definitely know that there's a lot of talent in the Irish League that I think the English clubs are starting to look at more. So we're going to have to mention Lincoln City again. I know you don't like it, but we're...
Thank you very much, Gab. Have a lovely day, mate. See you soon.
They've had some success, recruiting in the Irish League, and sometimes loaning players out to the Irish League as well as a sort of a tester for before League One level. So that they've done quite well with that. And I definitely think that you can do well off the Irish League. The one thing that I think you've got to be quite careful of is the Irish League is happens over the calendar year rather than the academic year, which I think you've got to be quite careful of if you're recruiting from it, because it means that if you sign a player from Ireland in the summer, you're actually signing them in season. So you've got to make sure that when you sign them, you actually give them a bit of a holiday and a bit of time to sort of and maybe sort of set the time scale back a little bit on what sort of impact you're expecting on the first game of the season, because I think then you want to make sure that you're managing them well and that you give them enough of a break and you maybe don't set the expectation too high. That's what I would think. You've just got to be quite aware of that you're signing a player in season, because otherwise they're going to have an 18-month season and it's probably too much.
Yeah, interesting. Having said that, some of the clubs that were Premiership clubs, going down a different tangent here, but I'm going to have a little moan and a rant here, Gab.
Go for it.
Some of those Premiership sides that don't want those FA Cup replays, they finish the season and they're straight over to Australia or straight over to America or Saudi, playing friendlies, aren't they? So,
going to Grimsby on a Wednesday night is too much. But,
exactly.
But then you can fly to Australia after the season's finished.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crackers, isn't it? But it's money. It's money, as we well know.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. So where was I? So I think There's two things that really. I think the recruitment, having Joe Hutchinson and a proper recruitment specialist alongside him, is a massive advantage for David Artell, and something that he didn't have at Crewe. I think probably one of the disadvantages he's maybe got at Grimsby as opposed to Crewe is that the club isn't necessarily steeped in his kind of cultural stylistic ideas. So for Crewe Alexandra, he was the academy manager for a while, and he actually coached a lot of the sort of golden generation at a youth level. But it was very much the Crewe way right the way through. Whereas I think at Grimsby, and especially the fact that he's not brought in his own coaches, so it's like he's kind of had to get the players accustomed to his ideas, and he's probably had to do a bit of work with Sean and Ben as his assistants as well, because they're very young coaches, and they might not necessarily have come across those sorts of principles of play as well. So it is a bit like one person trying to take the whole club with him, sort of in a stylistic direction.
Yeah, I mean, it's a project, isn't it? And ultimately, because of what you've just spoken about there, he needs time in order to implement that. I mean, we've got some talented players in that youth system, some that are on the edge of breaking in, your Cameron Gardners and players like that. But it's going to take time to get them, like you say. Crewe are all set up for that style of play and have been for decades now.
Yeah.
So those youth players can step straight into that first team and know the role, know what's expected of them, know the style of play. It is going to take time for us to implement that. But I do think from interviews with and bits I've read, it was Stockwood and Pettit, I think it's very much the way they want to take the club. So whether Artell stays or not, I still think that we will still try and implement this playing football in a certain way. So, yeah, I think we're at the start of a project there, but that should be exciting because there's been, again, decades, I used that word a second ago for Crewe, but there's been decades at Grimsby Town where it's been hard to know what our identity is.
Well, you've certainly not had a footballing side, I want to say, since who's the legendary manager of Grimsby Town? That's name's just escaped me.
Alan Buckley.
Alan Buckley, thank you.
Alan Buckley, that is, Gab.
Sir Alan Buckley. Yeah, okay, I'll make sure I've got that. I think my impression is that probably since his last stint at the club, you've never really had much of a footballing side.
No. I mean, obviously little snippets, but no, very much. And even seasons where we've been quite successful, like there was the year under Russell Slade where we lost in the playoff final, but that was very much lump it up to Gary Jones, get ready chasing it with his pace. And yeah, there was a lot of long ball stuff there. So yeah, you're very right. And even in terms of recruitment over the years, it's been hard to work out what are we actually looking for here. Whereas again, it feels very much like you can see sort of what the base of our recruitment is going to look like this year. We're going for technical players. We're going for players that are a certain age bracket. Ultimately, there's going to be outliers in this. You don't want to fill your squad with that. I'm sure we'll sign somebody that's 31. We might sign somebody that's 19. But you can sort of see what we're going for. Whereas in the past, it's felt a bit like, well, often we've had managers that have brought in players that they've known before, or it's just been a bit, who's available on a free, we'll have them, give them a go sort of thing. So yeah, it's interesting. Again, on the back of that, which we haven't for many years, we've been paying fees for players over this last 2 or 3 years under Stockwood and Pettit. They'll be small, they'll be nominal fees, but again, it just like Jordan Wright came in, we've paid a fee for him. Now, don't get me wrong, we won't have broken the bank for him. We're not talking huge figures, but that wouldn't have happened in the past. Yeah, we'd have ended up bringing a goalkeeper in that was released from somebody the year before because
Sure.
it hadn't worked out. And I know ultimately, again, we'll be signing some players that have been released, but it's just nice to feel like that isn't all we're looking at.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, great that the club is able to pay a fee for the right players. We've touched on how the left back spot definitely needs addressing. Presumably, you'd like the idea of Denver Hume coming back.
Yes, I would. Yeah, I quite liked him. He has divided opinion a little bit. There are a few Town fans that are not as impressed, but I thought there's potential for a good player there. And I think you've always got to remember when a player comes in halfway through a season, it is tougher for them to come into an established team and an established side at times. They don't always hit the ground running. And he was a player, again, that before being at us, he hadn't had lots of football. So it was tough for him from Portsmouth to come and step straight in. I thought he looked good. I thought he was a solid left back, and I would like him to stay. Obviously, it seems to be taking a while, that one, so it makes you wonder what is going on. Ultimately, when he signed, though, he signed on a 6-month contract, and which obviously points to he felt like he was coming to us hoping to put his name back out there and look back for another League One side or above. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting one. I think he did well. I think actually it's probably worked quite nicely because I don't think he set the world alight that much that League One Championship clubs will be queuing up at the door for him.
Right.
So I think we have got potential to keep him. And personally, I hope he stays. I mean, he's got good pedigree, the clubs he's been at. Again, that right sort of age that he's got a good few years left in his career. I think 27, Hume. So, yeah, I think personally, I would like him to stay.
Well, let's hope he does. 2 left backs, of course, you're going to need now as well.
I mean, there's talk that again, to jump back to him, that McJanet, the Irish centre back, I think he's played left back a little bit as well. Right. I don't think he will be brought in as a left back, but he has apparently filled in that position.
Yeah,
it's always
I think
nice
Harvey Rogers is quite versatile as well. He can play left back. Probably wouldn't be your first choice, but he can fill in there as well.
And with the smaller squads that League Two sides have compared to some of the bigger teams, a few versatile players can be key, can't they? Especially when those fixtures start adding up. And not FA Cup replays, though.
Absolutely. So I want to come on to the midfield, Adam, because the big thing that stands out to me with the midfield is you've got to add creativity there across the park, across it really.
Yeah, definitely. Again, we've offered Ainley a contract extension, which I'm hoping and I feel probably will sign.
Yeah.
He showed signs of that creativity. In the glimpses we saw of him last season, obviously a very difficult season for him with his illness. But there was glimpses that made you think, there's a decent player in there. He came on again.
You know what, Adam, as well with Callum Ainley. I think so. When he first came through at Crewe Alexandra, he was probably one of the highest rated talents of his age group at the time. And he probably didn't go on to play as big a part in their successes as maybe would have been sort of predicted, I guess, back in 2016 when he really kind of came into the scene under Steve Davis. But I think what's kind of derailed him a little bit, I'm not 100% on the technical termination, so forgive me, Callum, but I think it's some sort of thyroid or glandular issue that's I think now being resolved. So I think he's been to the hospital and had an operation on it. And actually, that might be a factor behind why he finished last season really strongly in a couple of those appearances. So I'm hoping that if he can have a respectable EFL career with those sorts of challenges, what could he come up with when he's maybe in a sort of healthier position with the thyroid issue sort of dealt with. So I think that there's a world where Callum Ainley becomes a bit like a new signing this season, and it kind of brings a new lease of life for him.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it would. It'd be a lovely story if that was the case with the challenges he's had. It'd be fabulous if he does go on and have a great season for us. And because, like I say, there was the assist against Swindon late on, which was a vital game. We needed to win that one. That was the one that suddenly we felt safe afterwards. And again, he's got a lot of experience for his age. I think 250 odd games.
Yeah.
I think League Two level for Crewe. So he comes with a lot of experience. And again, he's that right sort of age. Do you know what though, Gab? I'm just, because I keep rattling on about that, and I'm sat here ticking over with me slight hangover after seeing the Liam Gallagher tribute act last night. My head's ticking over. I'm thinking, I'm 35 now. As Joe Hutchinson and this team start looking at the data, my name's not coming up, mate, is it? It's not. At 35, I've got no chance. I'm depressing myself here, Gab. But we are looking quite thin on the ground in midfield. I mean, we've got Curtis Thompson, who I'm delighted is going to be with us next season. I thought he was a big reason that we stayed up. Does that dirty work brilliantly, breaks up play, keeps the ball. I thought he was excellent. Obviously, we've got Kieran Green signed on for another year, which I think his contract was, an extension was triggered. We're not fully sure of the details there, but I guess just to the amount of minutes he played last year.
Do you know what I think? What strikes me with Kieran Green, Adam, is I actually think he's better in a more advanced midfield role, because when he was, so I remember his form around December, January, and February was not of the level required. But I think part of that was because he was playing in those deeper positions where the play was very sort of at a lower tempo stage, and it was like you were giving him the ball and it was like, right now, go and do something. And I don't think he's necessarily minded that way to sort of start creating something out of nothing. But I think in a more advanced role where he comes in the later stages of play, I actually think that he can produce the odd nice little flick, or little one touch, or certain things where when the ball's already moving, I actually think he's a little bit more creative, and I think you get a bit more out of him. But it's just when you give him the ball as a number 6 that he feels a bit snookered, maybe. So I think the more advanced role has actually worked for Kieran Green, and he had some great games towards the end of the season, like Crewe away, for instance.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, again, he does divide opinion a little bit. I know people that quite like him. I know other people that don't think he's a League Two player at all.
Which is what I would have said if you'd asked me about him in early March, say, for instance.
Yes, yeah. One thing you can't fault with him is he gives it absolutely everything. He's one of those players. He'll fly into tackles. He'll run his heart out. He does give it everything, and you can see why a manager would like him. He'd be one of those players that at training, you tell me what to do and I'll give it everything to do it, sort of thing. I don't think, actually, though, I mean, we're talking about him, I don't think we start the season with him first choice in the side. I think he's more likely to be a squad player. Obviously, then on top of that, we've got Evan Corey and Charles Vernon, but that's basically our midfield at the moment. So
you consider Charles Vernon a midfielder?
Yeah, well, attacking, not central midfield. Obviously,
right.
He's attacking wide player, isn't he? But yeah, so we're certainly going to be looking to bring a few players in those positions.
Yeah.
So yeah, watch this space, and we do need those creative, technical players if we're going to play the Artell style.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the number 6 is going to be super important. Someone that is really confident. accepting the ball off the defence, whether they've got someone on their back or not, and then can turn and play. I think that's going to make such a difference to the ease of the style, and hopefully that can make a real difference.
Off the top of your head, then, Gab, give us a name. Who would be a good signing that might potentially be available for that position? Wild a rumour as you like.
I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you, Adam.
Oh, right, okay.
So I think, I think the number 6 is a really important signing. I think one, and then hopefully you can get someone in a more advanced position as well who can create that way. So yeah, a couple of midfielders I think is going to be really important. But then you mentioned Charles Vernam there, Adam, and I really want to ask you about. It's a big season for him, isn't it?
Very much. Yeah. He's again, he's one of those players that in his career he's had real ups and downs. There's been times where there was times in his last stint after he went out on loan to Chorley, came back to us, he was unplayable at times. I mean, there was the famous goal he scored at Colchester, where he went on a mazy run. But again, he has times where he disappears out of games as well. But this season's been very much injury hit for him. So he needs to get his career back on track, basically. His contract... Oh, no, actually, I think he's got 2 more years on his contract.
Yes.
I was going to say, I think it's up at the end of this season, but it isn't. We signed a 3-year contract. He signed a 3-year contract. But even so, this is a vital year for him. Potentially, he could feel like a new signing and be fantastic for us. And I really hope that's the case with him being a localish lad. And we've seen glimpses of him being fantastic.
Sure.
But yeah, if it's another season like this previous one, who knows where his career might turn. I mean, he might well find himself being loaned out to non-league or whatever to get back on track again. Another return to Chorley.
Well, we'll see. I think that the starting point with Charles Vernam is we know he can dribble with the ball, and we know he can get into really good areas with that skill. So that's a great starting point. I think end product is an obvious thing to question about Charles Vernam, and I think that goes without saying that he's going to need to go up another level from that point of view. But I also think if you're going to be a wide forward in an Artell system, you've got to learn the certain positional nuances of how to play. And sometimes that means staying wider in larger stages of play and then coming inside at a later stage. And those sort of positional nuances are things that I think it's going to take him a bit of time to get used to. But he seems like a bright lad as well. He seems a really intelligent lad. So I'd hope that he's got a growth mindset and he can sort of absorb some of those ideas over pre-season and hopefully add that side to his game.
Certainly. I mean, the one bonus that Artell and players like Vernam have at the moment is we've got this long pre-season. When Artell first arrived, he was straight into the thick of matches coming thick and fast. So all that you're talking about, all the positional play, or the basically learning this new style of play, he's got time to work on those players now over the next coming couple of months. So I'm certain some of them, like all walks of life, some of them will adapt wonderfully well. Others won't.
Sure.
Where Vernam is on that, time will tell. But you're very right. He has got potential to make things happen. I mean, players on the pitch that can go past a player or two can, like you say, make things happen. It's just that he would have been brilliant. I'm reading a book at the moment, great book called...
what's it called?
When Footballers Were Skint. So it's about basically football 100 years ago and telling the story, or 100 odd years ago, and telling the story of players when they were earning money very similar to the rest of society.
Yeah.
But it's talking about how, at one point, it was talking about how in the late 1800s, the tactic was just basically dribble. Passing wasn't really in the game. You just got the ball and you just went for it. Vernon would have been great then, just going with it.
Yeah.
But ultimately now, and then a few teams started working out, hang on, if we knock it about, we can go round the team much easier. He needs to, like you say, develop that final ball, that he needs, that end product needs to come into his
I'm sure
game.
you've come, as a teacher, Adam, you've come across kids in the playground who play football and only want to run themselves and kind of go it alone. So I'd like to see. I'm doing Charles a bit of a disservice there, but I'd like to see him kind of try and learn that other side, and hopefully he can do that.
There's many a times, Gab, where I get involved with a year 5-6 football game at the back of the field, and I'm very much that person. Get the ball and 10-year-olds bouncing off you and stuff. It's great fun. So yeah, I can very much picture it. It's me. And if you ever want to feel like a fantastic footballer, play against 10-year-olds. It's great for you. Great for you.
Yeah, I'm sure they learned a lot from that.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
It's like that scene from Kes. If you've ever seen that,
I've never seen Kes.
Oh, well worth watching, especially the football scene where he's where this game of football goes on and the PE teacher. It's well worth a watch.
Okay, yeah, I'll add that onto my list. So yeah, obviously, a couple of wide forwards you're going to need to add, and then I guess we've got to talk about Danny Rose, haven't we, Adam? Because he was deservedly Player of the Year for you last season.
Oh, very much, yeah, very much. He was the one that throughout it all remained consistent with his performances. He all season he was he was a good player for us. So yeah, it was vital that we had him. If we didn't have Danny Rose last year, we may have struggled. There's no may about it. We needs a stronger modal verb than that. We would have struggled without him. So yeah, it's great that we've got him for another year. And again, because there was some talk, I mean, I've read bits that clubs might come in for him. The bonus we've got on this one, again, going back to it, is his age. If he'd had the season that he'd just had and was 22, I think a few clubs might have come in swooping for him from higher up the pyramid. But because he's in his 30s now, he's less likely to move on. I'm almost certain we'll have him next season, and delighted to have him.
Would you like to see him get a new contract then, Adam?
Yeah, I'd quite happily give him, extend it another year. Definitely, because his deal does run out at the end of this season. Whether that needs to be done now, I'm sure talks will happen at some point during next season. You can sometimes rush these things, and then if he doesn't quite perform at the level he has done, I think he will. I mean, he's done it throughout his career.
Sure.
But again, there's always that threat of a bad injury at his age can then start to change your opinion on that. But yeah, it'll be interesting, the striking positions. Obviously, we've got Wilson and Pike still on the books as well.
Yes.
I think we may well see, similar to Alex Hunt's leaving, I think we may well see Pike leaving, potentially. I don't think Artell fancied him, to be honest. He didn't play him all that much towards the end of the season. He didn't have a great season, to be honest. I mean, he got the odd goal early on. So I think we may well see Pike potentially a loan out to a side to free up some wages to bring somebody else in, possibly. Wilson, I can see him probably hanging around as a squad player. Again,
I think with Donovan Wilson, I think he plays best in a front two. So his best form, I think, was at Sutton United alongside a striker called Omar Bajil. I don't know if you've come across him.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, good striker at this level. But he would, so you had Omar Bajil sort of winning the physical duels and playing him in, and then Wilson kind of running onto it. And so I think he's a good poacher if you pair him in a front two. But if we say Artell wants to go for a 4-3-3, I think any striker you bring in or any striker other than Rose that you have, has to be able to play as a lone striker, because of the likelihood that it is going to just be the one out-and-out striker. So, that would be my reservation, I suppose, about Donovan Wilson. Can he play that sort of back to goal lone striker role?
Yeah, and I'm not certain. I think he's somebody that likes to get in behind, isn't he? Use his pace. So I'm not certain that we've seen that from him. And actually, on the back of that, as you're talking there, Pike could probably do more of a job doing that. So maybe, potentially, with you saying that, maybe it'll be Wilson we look to loan out.
Yeah.
He did have... when he first broke into the side a little bit, his goal to minutes ratio was fantastic for us, Wilson, for a short while. He kept coming on off the bench and scoring. He's got a finish there. There's potential there. But yeah, the only one really out the front line that I'm delighted we've still got is Rose.
Yeah.
Wilson and Pike don't excite me for next season. Rose, I'm pleased we've got him. And obviously within that as well, there's the Cameron Gardner. But again, where he fits in, he may well be a young lad, be loaned out for chunks of the
National League
season.
North, possibly, for Cam Gardner.
Yeah. National League North, any sides I can think of in there? Oh, yeah, Scunthorpe. yeah, potentially.
That would be good if he could,
league level.
If he could, keep Scunthorpe in the National League North.
Yeah.
I've got to say, if there's any Scunthorpe fans watching, I don't mean any malice towards your club. I'm just joining in the banter for Adam's sake.
And if there's any Scunthorpe fans watching, a little bit of malice towards your club, but friendly malice, I'll point out, Scunthorpe fans.
Okay, absolutely. Justin Abiku, would you have him back on loan if you had the option?
There's a question. Again, glimpses. I thought he looked good. He's a youngish lad. He's only hopefully going to improve. So possibly, but that's a tough one because without knowing the budget, without knowing who else we're looking at, it's like you need to know the broader picture almost, don't you, to make decisions like that. If we've got our eyes set on a couple of other players that we end up bringing in that position, then that could potentially be better than Abiku.
Could he play one of the wide forward spots, do you think, Adam?
Yeah, again, I think he's got some of the qualities to do that. Yeah, I do. So, I wouldn't rule it out, and I don't think Artell would rule it out. I think he quite liked him. I'm sure he will be within the discussions. Whether he will be first choice or not remains to be seen. We may well
and whether Coventry at this stage will be happy to loan him somewhere that he wouldn't necessarily be first choice as the centre forward. So
exactly, and who else comes in for him? And there's all sorts of different scenarios, isn't there? But to answer your question, I'm not sure it would really excite me as a signing if Abiku came back, but there's potential there that I could be eating my words at Christmas with that one because I think there was signs of a decent League Two player. And there's been times where we've signed players and I've, in my head, written them off before they've played, and then they've gone on to be brilliant for us, and vice versa. I remember being very excited when Adam Proudlock signed for us, and that didn't quite work out. So, and I could talk to you all day about different players where that's the scenario, Gab.
Yeah. So I guess to summarise, I wanted to touch on ownership. It feels like just a really obvious thing to say, but I think it's important to kind of re-emphasise the work that Jason Stockwood and Andrew Pettit have done as owners. You've obviously brought in Polly Bancroft as CEO, who speaks very well. Spoke very well in their first interview as well. So it does seem what's really important to me after overall a disappointing season. It does seem like the club has learnt lessons, and that for me is a really big thing with this ownership regime. They do take things out of seasons where it hasn't gone well, and hopefully they can learn from that, and that's going to make you a better club.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, a lot of positive stuff around the club at the moment. I mean, just look at that kit launch video, Gab.
Yeah, I
Thing of
saw
beauty,
that.
mate. Thing of beauty.
It was what I saw was I don't know if you've seen this morning because it was released a few minutes before we went on air. There's a massive queue
Yes.
for the club shop. So I mean, I don't know whether they're just very keen on the mugs, but I think it might be the top. So
Yeah.
that's a really exciting thing, I think, as well. That
It is, yeah, yeah. I mean, we'd half talked about taking our eldest and treating him to the new top today. I've seen that queue, and he might have to wait a week or two, Gab. I'm not sure I fancy queuing in that on my my Saturday off. But yeah, there's a lot of positive stuff surrounding the club at the moment. Things going on in the community. Again, we've just sold 5,000 season tickets
Brilliant.
plus, which is, I mean, that was unheard of
Yeah.
10 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So great numbers. And again, looking from the outside at how some other clubs are run, I mean, you only have to look even in this division at the likes of Swindon. I think there's problems there at the moment,
Yeah.
and Morecambe, for instance. And
Mm.
it fills you with hope and pride that we're in a much better place than that. We're a lot more stable. Granted, on the field last season, there was mistakes were made, but I do think we will come back stronger. I don't think we will be fighting relegation this season. And as a club as a whole, I think we're in a great place.
Well, with that in mind, then you don't think you'll be fighting relegation. What do you think of the expectations and targets for 24-25? And would you say they're all result and position oriented, or do you think it's partly developing a style, bringing a few high value players in that you might be able to have a high sell on value for next year? Does that come into it as well in terms of the expectations for this season?
Certainly. I mean, clubs at our level can live on bringing those players in and selling them on, the Camille Contes of this world.
Sure.
It can, because at this level, finances are very tight.
Yeah.
It's until you get to that Premier League, really, it's finances are very tight. So, yeah, obviously, finding a player that ends up making us a bit of money would be a huge bonus. You're looking to at least do that once a year, once every couple of years at the very least at this level. In terms, and obviously we're hopefully this season we will be able to go back to that Artell style of play. Because let's face it, it was exciting, but sadly it was more goals going in
Yeah.
at
Well, you
our end
want
than at
just
the
to
other
try
end.
and get the exciting bit, but with some of the solidity that you'd had in the last quarter of the season.
Exactly. So hopefully we'll see that, even if that's slowly implemented throughout the season, that would be great to see. In terms of league position, I think we'd be hoping for top half. I would have uh, hoped for top half, and obviously as a fan, you're always hoping that we can be in or around those playoffs.
Yeah.
A season where we're knocking on the door for playoffs would be great.
Do
I
you
mean,
think, how far do you think you are off a playoff side? I mean, if you get some of the right additions that we've spoken about, do you think, because the league has got weaker with, you could argue with, with Stockport, with Wrexham, with Mansfield, all exiting the division, and even to an extent, you could argue Forest Green because of the money that they've got, even though they were very poor on the pitch last season, but that's another financial powerhouse, if you like, gone. Could the league be more open next season?
Very much. I mean, in terms of budgets, it's going to be much narrower. Obviously, there'll be teams that have a bit more than others, but budgets are going to be narrower, especially with Stockport, Wrexham gone. They were blowing other teams out the water. not just other teams in League Two as well. I think a lot of League One sides were complaining last summer that they were struggling to sign players because of the money in League Two. So, yeah, in terms, I do think it is very much, which is the beauty of this level of football, very difficult to call who's going to be up. If you were to predict a League Two table now, I think you'd even an expert like you, Gab, you'd make some mistakes
Of
within that,
course, yeah.
because it is very much. Whereas the Premier League, you roughly know the top 6 or 7. And you have a good idea of 4 or 5 of the teams that are going to be fighting relegation, don't you? It's almost set in stone before the season starts. The exciting thing about League Two is you're not quite sure who it is going to be that's up there. You always think sides like Bradford potentially because of the bigger budget and could potentially be up there. And there's always teams that make good signings. You think, but then it doesn't always work like that. Look at Crawley.
Yeah.
Most people last season predicted Crawley to be relegated. They've gone up. And yeah, so yeah, it's a very open division next year. So there is potential for us to be fighting that relegation battle, but then to be sat in the playoffs next season. I didn't say automatic, Gab, because there'll be people laughing at me.
Don't want to get ahead of yourself.
Exactly, but yeah, 7th place. I'd snatch your hand off now after last season for that. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, for sure. So with that in mind, you're saying you're aiming for a top half finish. What are the big reasons, just to condense what we've talked about in this podcast so far, big reasons for you to believe that you will achieve that ambition?
The big reasons. Ownership. I think it all starts at the top. I think we've got some of the. Personally, I believe we've got some of the best owners at this level of football. Granted, I'm no expert on all the other sides and the ownership and things, but just the way we're trying to do things, it seems to be different to other clubs.
Yeah.
The whole data approach, I think it's a great way forward. It's the world now, isn't it? I mean, it's how businesses run. So I think we're a forward-thinking club at the moment. The other things, I think, some of those signings that came in January helped us, improved us in Thompson, in Tham, and to an extent, your players like Hume as well. So I do think if we can have another transfer window like that and bring in a handful of players that move us forward again, there's that potential. And again, like we've just spoken about, I think it's just an easier league this year. I think there's going to be nobody that really runs away with it like Stockport and Wrexham did. I mean, by Christmas time, they went on a bit of a run, didn't they? And they were off, and it was fairly obvious that they were going to be automatic promotion. So, yeah, a lot of hope. And obviously exciting videos from Iceland as well, and makes you think, who are we going to bring in here? That
Absolutely.
Do I need to go out and get an Iceland flag? And yeah, so
not after the other week, Adam.
yeah, true, very true. Yeah. We need to just stop playing them, don't we? As a national side, it's Iceland as a bogey team. It's
yeah. So, what would be the reasons to doubt whether you'll meet those ambitions?
Last season, if Artell's style again just doesn't work out, because he's going to switch back to that style of play that he tried to implement initially. If it just doesn't work, then we may well find ourselves early on very much playing catch up. I mean, that's the biggest worry, that similar happens, and like we had to sack Hurst, we get into that spiral.
It's got to be right, hasn't it?
Yeah. And again, we're looking to sign some unknowns from different leagues, and as I spoke to you about earlier, that could work out wonderfully well. Or for a variety of reasons, signing players from, and again, this is all potential. It's nothing set in stone yet, but signing players from the Irish Premier League, signing players from Iceland, it isn't always going to work. They're not always going to fit in fantastically well. So, yeah, there's question marks as always. But again, that's why I've renewed my season ticket, and it's exciting. And who knows?
That's
but
why we left.
One thing I'm for certain on the fishy message board, on social media, whatever happens in that first game, people will have either written us off as relegation fodder, or we're going up as champions. Let's get the bus. Let's get the bus parade booked now. So yeah, half time of that first game in the bar, it'll be that sort of discussion, won't it, Gab? You know,
if they don't like
how we work.
Kick from kickoff, it's like, right, that's it. I'm going.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Misplaced pass. That's it. Yeah, we're done. We're rubbish again. Get Artell out.
Yes. So too early to ask you for a prediction, obviously, because a lot's still to be done in terms of the transfer window. But give me a number between 1 and 10 to denote your level of optimism as we head towards pre-season.
10 being highest here, Gab.
10 being highest, yes.
7. I'll go 7 there. Yeah, just because of doubts from last season. But yeah, 7. And as the season gets closer, that'll slowly creep up. Like I say, until kick off, and it'll drop back down. That night before, I'll be on 11.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Adam, it's been such a pleasure to get your insight. Love your stuff on the View from the Findus podcast. So everyone go and check those out.
Thank you very much. And I hope if anybody's listening, if you haven't yet, the Craig Disley interview, he was very interesting to listen to. So I very much urge you to give that an hour of your time at some point.
Absolutely, well worth a listen. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been the Grimsby Town Summer Deep Dive. We'll see you again next time.